Sarah Mitchell stood in formation with 43 other recruits on the first day of basic training at Fort Bragg, the North Carolina. Sun beat down mercilessly on the training ground, and sweat already dripped down her spine despite the early morning hour. She kept her eyes forward, shoulders back, trying to blend in with the sea of nervous faces around her. At 22 years old, Sarah had dreamed of this moment for years. The military represented everything she wanted: purpose, discipline, and a chance to prove herself. But as she stood there in her crisp new uniform, she couldn't shake the familiar anxiety that had followed her since childhood. The scars on her face and neck were impossible to hide. They stretched from her left cheek down to her collarbone, a permanent reminder of the house fire that had nearly claimed her life when she was 7 years old. The fire had started in the kitchen while her younger brother played upstairs. Sarah had run through the flames to reach him, pulling him out of his bedroom window before the ceiling collapsed. She survived, but the burns left marks that no surgery could completely erase. Growing up, Sarah learned to endure the stares and whispered comments. Kids at school called her names. Teenagers avoided sitting next to her. Even as an adult, she noticed how people's eyes would linger on her scars before quickly looking away. She developed thick skin over the years, but the pain never completely disappeared. The drill sergeant's voice boomed across the training ground, snapping Sarah back to the present. Sergeant Williams was a towering man with a voice that could shake windows. He paced in front of the formation, his sharp eyes scanning each recruit with the intensity of a hawk hunting prey. "Listen up," he barked. "For the next 12 weeks, this base is your home. I am your worst nightmare and your best teacher. You will learn discipline. You will learn respect. You will learn what it means to be a soldier. Some of you will make it. Some of you will quit. I don't care which one you are right now. I only care about results." Sarah felt her heart pounding. This was real. This was happening. She had left behind her quiet life in Ohio, her part-time job at the library, and her small apartment to pursue this dream. Her mother had cried when she enlisted, worried about her daughter's safety. But Sarah knew this was her path. The recruits were divided into smaller groups and assigned to their barracks. Sarah found herself in Barrack C with 11 other women. As they filed inside, she noticed the mix of personalities, some confident and loud, others quiet and nervous like herself. Her bunk was in the middle of the room. She set down her duffel bag and began organizing her belongings according to the strict guidelines they'd been given. Everything had to be perfect. Clothes folded precisely, boots lined up exactly, personal items minimal and neat. "Hey, you're Sarah, right?" A voice came from the bunk below hers. Sarah looked down to see a petite woman with bright red hair and freckles covering her cheeks. She had a friendly smile that reached her green eyes. "That's me," Sarah replied, grateful for the warm greeting. "I'm Kelly Thompson. From Texas. First time away from home, and I'm already homesick." Kelly laughed nervously. "My mama made me promise to call every chance I get. What about you?" "Ohio. And yeah, first time for me, too." Sarah felt herself relaxing slightly. Maybe she could make friends here. 2 other women joined their conversation. Jessica was from California, tall and athletic with the confidence of someone who'd played sports her whole life. Maya was from New York, quiet but observant, with intelligent dark eyes that seemed to take in everything, as they talked and unpacked. Sarah began to feel a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in years. These women came from different backgrounds, but they were all here for the same reason, to serve their country and become something greater than themselves. Then Marcus Chen walked past their open door. He was part of the male group assigned to the barracks across the hall. Marcus was stocky and muscular, with a cocky swagger that immediately set Sarah on edge. He stopped at their doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. Well, what do we have here?" he said, his eyes scanning the room. When his gaze landed on Sarah, his expression changed. His eyes widened slightly, then narrowed as he stared at her scars. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. She recognized that look. She'd seen it 1,000 times before. "Dude, come on, we need to finish unpacking," another male recruit called from down the hall, but Marcus didn't move. He kept staring at Sarah, and then a smirk spread across his face. "What happened to you? You look like you went 10 rounds with a barbecue grill and lost." Oh, the room fell silent. Kelly gasped. Jessica's mouth dropped open. Maya's eyes flashed with anger. Sarah felt her face flush hot. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Every instinct told her to fire back, to defend herself, to show him he couldn't hurt her. But her voice caught in her throat. "It's not cool, man," said another recruit named David, appearing behind Marcus. "Seriously, shut up." Marcus shrugged, still smirking. "What? I'm just making an observation. If she's going to be a soldier, she better have thick skin." "Oh, wait." He laughed at his own cruel joke. Before Sarah could respond, Kelly stepped forward, her face red with fury. "Get out of here before I report you to the sergeant." Marcus raised his hands in mock surrender. "Relax. I'm just joking around." "Can't anyone take a joke anymore?" He pushed off from the doorframe and sauntered away. Laughing with a couple of other recruits who'd gathered to watch, Sarah sat down hard on her bunk, her legs suddenly weak. The old familiar shame washed over her, mixed with anger and humiliation. She'd hoped the military would be different. She'd hoped that here, among people dedicated to service and honor, she'd finally be judged on her abilities rather than her appearance. "Don't listen to him," Kelly said fiercely, sitting beside her. "He's an idiot." "Kelly's right," Jessica added. "That guy's a complete jerk." Maya nodded in agreement. "People like him don't last long here anyway. The sergeants will eat him alive." Sarah appreciated their support, but the damage was done. The first day hadn't even ended, and already she was marked as different, as other, as someone to mock. She wondered if enlisting had been a mistake. The next 3 weeks at Fort Bragg tested Sarah in ways she'd never imagined. Every morning started at 4:30 with the harsh sound of a whistle piercing through the barracks. The recruits had exactly 15 minutes to get dressed, make their beds to perfect military standards, and form up outside for inspection. Any mistake meant punishment, extra push-ups, extra laps, or worse, letting down your entire unit. Sarah threw herself into the training with fierce determination. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs felt like rubber. She did push-ups until her arms shook. She memorized regulations, practiced drills, and pushed through every obstacle course they threw at her. If she couldn't control how people saw her face, she could at least control how they saw her performance. The physical training was brutal but straightforward. It was the social dynamics that proved more complicated. Marcus Chen had made himself the unofficial leader of a small group of recruits who seemed to take pleasure in making others uncomfortable. He never missed an opportunity to make a cutting remark, always delivered with a smile that made it seem like harmless joking. During meals in the cafeteria, Marcus and his friends sat at a table near the back. Whenever Sarah walked by, she could hear their snickering. Sometimes Marcus would make exaggerated gestures, pretending to shield his face or dramatically look away. His friends would laugh, and Sarah would keep walking, her face burning with humiliation. "Why don't you report him?" Kelly asked one evening as they cleaned their weapons together. Weapon maintenance was a daily ritual, and the recruits had learned to use the time for quiet conversation. Sarah shook her head. "Running the cleaning rod through her rifle barrel, it won't help. It'll just make things worse. Trust me, I've dealt with people like him my whole life." "But this is the military," Kelly insisted. "There are rules against harassment. He'll say he was just joking. He's careful never to cross the line too far. Guys like him always are." Sarah's voice was tired. This was an old fight, when she'd fought many times before in different places with different people. Jessica, who was cleaning her weapon nearby, looked up. "Well, I think you're handling it with a lot more grace than I would. I'd probably punch him in the face." Maya smiled slightly at that. "Which is why you've already been disciplined twice for losing your temper during drills." The 4 women had become close over the past weeks. They looked out for each other, sharing extra supplies when someone ran out, covering for each other during inspections, and providing emotional support through the grueling days. In a place designed to break down individuals and rebuild them as soldiers, their friendship became Sarah's anchor. But Marcus's behavior escalated. During a particularly challenging obstacle course run, Sarah was climbing over a wall when she heard his voice below. "Move faster, Scarface. You're holding up the line." Several recruits laughed. Sarah gritted her teeth and pulled herself over the wall, landing hard on the other side. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him about the fire, about saving her brother, about the pain and the surgeries and the years of cruel comments. But she said nothing. She just kept moving. Sergeant Williams noticed the interaction. His sharp eyes missed very little. He blew his whistle, and the entire unit froze. Chen. Front and center. Marcus jogged to the front, still wearing his cocky expression. "Yes, Sergeant." "Drop and give me 50 push-ups. Now." "Sergeant, I was just—" "Now it's 100. You want to keep talking and make it 200? Marcus dropped to the ground and began his push-ups. The other recruits watched in silence. When he finished, Sergeant Williams leaned down close to his face. "I don't care what you think is funny, Chen. In my unit, we respect each other. We don't tear each other down. We build each other up, because when you're in combat, the person next to you might save your life. You think Mitchell cares about your stupid jokes when she's pulling you out of a burning vehicle? You think she's going to leave you behind because you hurt her feelings? No, she's going to save your worthless hide because that's what soldiers do. Now get back in line." Sarah felt a surge of gratitude toward the sergeant, but she also knew this wouldn't end the problem. It might even make it worse. Bullies didn't stop being bullies just because they got punished. They just got sneakier. She was right. Marcus became more careful, making his comments only when no sergeants were nearby. He recruited more people to his side, and soon Sarah found herself isolated from nearly half the recruit company. Some avoided her because they genuinely believed Marcus. Others because they didn't want to become targets themselves. The breaking point came during week 4. The recruits were practicing hand-to-hand combat techniques in the training gym. They were paired up randomly, and Sarah found herself facing Marcus. Her stomach dropped. This couldn't be good. The drill sergeant instructor demonstrated the moves they were supposed to practice: blocks, holds, and controlled takedowns. The emphasis was on technique, not force. This was about learning, not fighting. Marcus smiled at Sarah as they faced each other on the mat. "Try not to get hurt, Mitchell. You've already got enough scars." Sarah didn't respond. She got into position and waited for the signal to begin. When it came, they started moving through the techniques. At first, everything went according to protocol, but then, during a takedown maneuver, Marcus used far more force than necessary. He swept Sarah's legs out from under her and shoved her hard. She hit the mat with a painful thud that knocked the wind out of her. "Oops," Marcus said loudly enough for others to hear. "Sorry, Mitchell. Guess I don't know my own strength." Sarah lay on the mat for a moment, struggling to breathe. Rage boiled up inside her, hot and overwhelming. Every cruel comment, every mocking laugh, every humiliating moment of the past 4 weeks crashed over her. She'd been patient. She'd been quiet. She'd tried to take the high road. She was done being quiet. Sarah rolled to her feet faster than Marcus expected. Before he could react, she executed a perfect takedown, using his own weight and momentum against him. He hit the mat hard, and she followed up with a hold that trapped his arm behind his back. "That's how it's done," she said quietly, her voice shaking with controlled fury. With technique, not with being a bully. The gym had gone silent. Everyone was watching. Marcus's face was red, partly from exertion and partly from embarrassment. Sarah released him and stepped back, her heart pounding. The drill instructor walked over slowly, his expression unreadable. Sarah held her breath, certain she was about to be disciplined. Instead, he nodded. "Good technique, Mitchell. That's exactly what I want to see. Control and precision." He looked at Marcus, who was climbing to his feet. "Chen, you want to try that again? This time without the unnecessary force?" Marcus glared at Sarah but nodded. They went through the drill again, this time properly. But Sarah could see the hatred in his eyes. She'd humiliated him in front of everyone. This wasn't over. In fact, she'd probably just made everything much worse. Week 6 brought a change to the training schedule. The recruits were informed they'd be participating in a multi-day field exercise in the forest surrounding the base. This was a major test that would challenge everything they'd learned so far: navigation, survival skills, teamwork, and mental toughness. They'd be divided into squads and given missions to complete while living in the wilderness with minimal supplies. Sarah felt both excited and nervous. The field exercise represented a chance to prove herself away from Marcus's constant harassment. Out in the forest, performance would matter more than appearance. Skills would speak louder than cruel words. The night before they deployed, Sergeant Williams gathered the entire company in the briefing room. He stood at the front with a large map displayed on the screen behind him. Tomorrow morning at 0500 hours, you will move out to the training area. You'll be divided into squads of 8. Each squad will receive coordinates for multiple objectives. You must reach each objective, complete the assigned task, and move to the next location. Food and water will be limited. Shelters you build yourself. Some of you will succeed. Some will fail. The military doesn't grade on effort. We grade on results. He paused, letting his words sink in. One more thing. There will be evaluators watching you at all times. They won't interfere unless there's a safety issue. They're assessing your leadership potential, your ability to work as a team, and your performance under stress. This exercise counts for 30% of your final score. Take it seriously. That night, Sarah barely slept. She lay in her bunk, listening to Kelly's soft snoring from below and the various sounds of the barracks at night. Her mind raced through everything she'd learned: how to read a compass, how to purify water, how to build a shelter, how to move quietly through the forest. She'd studied hard and practiced every skill until she could do it blindfolded. She was ready. The next morning came quickly. In the pre-dawn darkness, the recruits assembled with their gear. Each person carried a heavy pack containing basic supplies: a tarp, rope, water purification tablets, a first aid kit, and minimal food rations. They also carried their rifles, though these were loaded with blank ammunition for training purposes. Sergeant Williams read out the squad assignments. Sarah held her breath, hoping to be grouped with Kelly, Jessica, or Maya. Instead, she heard her name called for Squad 3, along with 7 others. Her heart sank when she heard Marcus's name on the same list. The universe had a cruel sense of humor. Squad 3 consisted of Sarah, Marcus, a quiet guy named Tom, who was excellent with maps, a strong but slow runner named Patricia, 2 friends from Michigan named Jake and Andrew who did everything together, a nervous recruit named Lisa who seemed on the verge of quitting, and their squad leader Danny, who'd been appointed because of his prior military experience in the National Guard. They gathered in their assigned area. Danny spread out the map. Okay, team, here's our first objective. We need to reach this clearing approximately 8 miles northeast of here. Once there, we'll find instructions for building a signal fire, according to specific requirements. After that, we move to Objective 2. The squad moved out as the sun began to rise. The forest was beautiful in the early morning light, with mist hanging between the trees and birds beginning their dawn chorus. Under different circumstances, Sarah might have enjoyed the experience. Instead, she found herself walking near the back of the group, trying to stay as far from Marcus as possible. The first few hours went smoothly. Tom navigated with the map and compass while Danny kept everyone on pace. They made good time through the relatively easy terrain. But as the day grew hotter and the landscape more challenging, tensions began to emerge. Patricia struggled with the pace, frequently needing breaks. Lisa twisted her ankle, stepping in a hole, and had to lean on Jake for support. Andrew complained constantly about the heat, the insects, and the weight of his pack. Marcus, predictably, had something negative to say about everything and everyone. When they stopped for a water break around midday, Marcus spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "We're falling behind schedule because some people can't keep up." His eyes flickered toward Patricia and Lisa, then settled on Sarah. "Maybe if we had a stronger squad, we'd actually have a chance at finishing in the top 3. Danny, who'd been studying the map, looked up sharply. "We're doing fine, Marcus. Everyone's pulling their weight. Are they, though?" Marcus shot back. "Some people are here because they have something to prove, not because they belong here." Sarah felt her face grow hot, but she stayed quiet. She'd learned that engaging with Marcus only encouraged him. Tom, the quiet navigator, surprised everyone by speaking up. Actually, Mitchell has been maintaining better pace than most of us. She hasn't complained once, and she helped Lisa wrap her ankle earlier. Maybe focus on your own performance instead of criticizing others. Marcus glared at Tom but said nothing more. They packed up and continued moving. As afternoon turned to evening, they reached their first objective, a clearing exactly as marked on their map. In the center was a metal box containing their instructions. Danny opened it and read aloud. Build a signal fire in the center of this clearing. The fire must be visible from the observation tower 1 mile north. You must keep the fire burning for 2 hours, starting at sunset. Use only natural materials found in the surrounding area. Your squad will be graded on fire construction, sustainability, and visibility. Building a proper signal fire required specific knowledge. It wasn't just about making flames. It needed the right structure to produce smoke during the day or bright flames at night. Sarah had studied this extensively during her preparation. I know how to do this, she said quietly. I've practiced the technique. Danny looked at her, then nodded. Okay, Mitchell. You take the lead on fire construction. Marcus and Andrew gather firewood. Jake, help Lisa set up our camp area. Patricia and Tom work on getting water from that stream we passed. I'll set up the perimeter. Marcus's jaw tightened. Why is she in charge of the fire? I know how to build fires too, because she volunteered and clearly has confidence in her skills, Danny replied firmly. Now move out. We have limited time before sunset. For the next hour, Sarah worked with intense focus. She dug a shallow pit and surrounded it with rocks. She gathered different types of materials: tinder made from dry grass and bark, kindling from small twigs, and larger fuel wood. She constructed a pyramid structure designed to burn hot and produce. Maximum Light Marcus returned with an armload of wood and dropped it near her without a word. His expression was dark, but he didn't argue. The rest of the squad worked on their assigned tasks, and slowly their camp took shape. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sarah lit the fire. It caught immediately, and within minutes, flames leaped high into the darkening sky. The fire was perfect, bright, sustained, and visible for miles. Danny stood back and nodded approvingly. Outstanding work, Mitchell. Even Patricia and Lisa smiled at her. Tom gave her a thumbs up. For the first time since arriving at Fort Bragg, Sarah felt genuine acceptance from her fellow recruits. Her skills had spoken louder than Marcus's words. But Marcus wasn't done. As the night wore on, and they took turns keeping watch and maintaining the fire, he found opportunities to make quiet comments that only Sarah could hear. Each one was a small poisoned dart aimed at her confidence. The real test came on the second day of the exercise. They were navigating through a particularly dense section of forest when Lisa, still struggling with her injured ankle, fell behind. Sarah dropped back to help her while the rest of the squad moved ahead. Suddenly, they heard a sharp cry. Sarah and Lisa hurried forward to find Patricia on the ground, her face twisted in pain. She'd slipped on wet rocks while crossing a small stream and fallen hard. Her leg was bent at an unnatural angle. Danny immediately took charge, calling for the squad to halt. He examined Patricia's leg carefully. It's broken. We need to splint this and call for medical evacuation. This was a real emergency, not part of the training exercise. Danny pulled out his emergency radio to call for help while the others gathered around uncertainly. Sarah's first aid training kicked in automatically. She knelt beside Patricia, speaking in calm tones while assessing the injury. Patricia, I need you to stay still. Don't try to move that leg. We're going to take care of you. She looked up at the others. I need straight branches for a splint, clothing we can tear for ties, and someone to help me stabilize her leg. Marcus crossed his arms. What makes you the expert here? Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. For once, she didn't hold back. Because I've actually paid attention in first aid training instead of spending my time making fun of people. Now, either help or get out of the way. Patricia needs us. The urgency in her voice cut through the tension. Tom and Andrew quickly gathered materials while Sarah directed them on how to position the splint. Even Marcus, though reluctant, helped hold Patricia steady during the procedure. Sarah's hands were firm and gentle as she immobilized the broken leg, talking Patricia through the pain and keeping her calm. The medical evacuation helicopter arrived 30 minutes later, touching down in a clearing not far from where Patricia had been injured. 2 medics rushed out with a stretcher, and Sarah briefed them quickly on the injury and the care she'd provided. One of the medics, an older woman with sergeant's stripes, looked impressed. "You did excellent work here, recruit. The splint is properly positioned and you've kept her stable. What's your name?" "Mitchell, Sergeant." The medic nodded approvingly. "Good job, Mitchell. You may have saved her from additional complications." She turned to Danny. "Your squad can continue the exercise. We'll take care of her from here." As the helicopter lifted off, carrying Patricia away, the remaining members of Squad 3 stood in silence. The reality of their situation had shifted. This wasn't just a training game anymore. Real injuries could happen. Real consequences existed. Danny checked his map and compass. "We're behind schedule now, but we can still complete the exercise. Our next objective is 6 miles southeast. If we push hard, we can make it before nightfall." The squad moved out, but the atmosphere had changed. Everyone was more focused, more serious. Even Marcus seemed subdued, though Sarah caught him glancing at her several times with an expression she couldn't quite read. It wasn't his usual mockery, but it wasn't friendly either. They reached their second objective just as the sun was setting. This time, the task involved setting up a temporary communication station and sending coded messages using radio equipment. Andrew, who had experience with electronics, took the lead while the others set up camp for the night. Sarah worked on preparing their evening meal, which consisted of heating military rations over a small camp stove. It wasn't gourmet food, but after a long day of hiking and the stress of Patricia's injury, even the basic rations tasted acceptable. As they ate, Tom spoke up. "Mitchell, where did you learn first aid like that? You were really calm back there." Sarah hesitated. She rarely talked about her past, especially the fire. But these people had just watched her handle a crisis, and they deserved honesty. "When I was 7, there was a fire in my house," she began slowly. "My little brother was trapped upstairs. I went in after him and got him out, but I got burned pretty badly in the process. After that, I spent a lot of time in hospitals. I saw how the nurses and doctors worked, how they stayed calm in emergencies. I guess I learned from watching them." The group fell silent. Lisa looked at Sarah with new understanding. "Your scars. That's from saving your brother?" Sarah nodded, unconsciously touching her cheek. "Yeah, the doctors did what they could, but some scars don't fade." Jake, who'd been quiet most of the trip, leaned forward. "That's incredibly brave. How old was your brother?" 5. He's 17 now, about to start his senior year of high school. He wants to be a firefighter." Sarah smiled softly. "I think he feels like he owes something to the people who saved us that day." Even Marcus was listening, though his expression remained unreadable. Danny nodded slowly. "That explains a lot about why you're here, Mitchell. Takes guts to run into danger when you already know how much it can cost." The conversation moved on to other topics, but Sarah felt a subtle shift in how the squad viewed her. The scars weren't just marks of trauma anymore. They were evidence of courage, of sacrifice, of someone who acted when others might have frozen. The next 2 days of the field exercise pushed them all to their limits. They navigated through difficult terrain, completed navigation challenges, and worked together to solve tactical problems. Sarah continued to prove herself capable at every task. She didn't seek attention or recognition. She simply did what needed to be done efficiently and without complaint. Marcus's hostility didn't disappear, but it became less overt. He stopped making comments about her appearance, though his attitude toward her remained cold. Sarah didn't need him to like her. She just needed him to stop actively making her life miserable, and for the moment, that seemed to be happening. On the final day of the exercise, Squad 3 faced their ultimate challenge. They had to navigate to a specific set of coordinates, retrieve a flag from that location, and return it to base camp before noon. The catch was that the route involved crossing a river with swift current, climbing a steep hillside. and navigating through a section of forest marked as containing enemy observers, led by training staff who would try to intercept them. Danny gathered the squad at dawn. This is it. Everything we've learned comes down to the next 6 hours. We need to work together perfectly. No mistakes, no arguments, no individual heroics. We succeed as a team, or we fail as a team. They moved out in tactical formation, with Tom navigating and Sarah taking point as scout. Her weeks of training had sharpened her senses. She moved quietly through the forest, watching for signs of the observers and keeping the squad on the safest path. When they reached the river, they faced their first major obstacle. The water was deeper and faster than expected, churning over rocks and creating dangerous rapids. Crossing would be risky, especially while carrying their heavy packs and maintaining security of their equipment. Danny assessed the situation. We need to rope across. Mitchell, you're the lightest, and you've been moving the best through rough terrain. Can you get across first and secure the rope on the other side? Sarah looked at the rushing water and felt a flutter of fear in her stomach, but she pushed it down and nodded. I can do it. Sarah tied the other end around her waist, making sure the knot was secure. She approached the water's edge, feeling the cold spray on her face. The current was stronger than it looked. She stepped into the river, immediately feeling the force of the water pushing against her legs. The rocks beneath her feet were slippery, and the current threatened to sweep her downstream. She moved carefully, testing each step before committing her weight. Halfway across, her foot slipped. She went down hard, the water instantly pulling her downstream. The rope around her waist went taut, and she felt it cutting into her skin, even through her uniform. The squad on the shore shouted, pulling on the rope to stabilize her. Sarah's head went under for a moment. The cold shock of the water took her breath away. Panic clawed at her chest, but she forced herself to think clearly. She grabbed the rope with both hands and pulled herself hand over hand, back to where she'd lost her footing. Her muscles screamed with effort, but she kept moving. Finally, her feet found solid rock again. She stood, gasping for air, and continued across more carefully. When she reached the far shore, she quickly secured the rope around another tree, creating a handline for the others to follow. One by one, the squad crossed using the rope for stability. Marcus came last, and Sarah watched as he navigated the same treacherous rocks that had nearly swept her away. For a moment, he slipped too, but he caught himself on the rope and recovered. When he reached the far shore, he looked at Sarah for a long moment. That took guts, he said quietly. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was the closest thing to respect he'd ever shown her. They pressed on, climbing the steep hillside with burning legs and labored breathing. Near the top, they spotted 2 observers positioned to intercept them. Danny called for a halt and gathered the squad. Can't avoid them. We have to get past them somehow. Any ideas? Sarah studied the terrain. There's a gully that runs parallel to their position. If we can create a distraction on the main path, a smaller group could move through the gully while they're focused elsewhere. Danny nodded. Good thinking. Marcus, Jake, Andrew, you 3 create the distraction. Move loud and obvious on the main path. Mitchell, Tom, Lisa, you're with me? We'll take the gully. The plan worked perfectly. While Marcus's group made noise and drew the observers' attention, Sarah's smaller team crept through the gully, moving silently and staying low. They retrieved the flag from its hiding spot and began the return journey. Squad 3 arrived back at base camp with 45 minutes to spare before the noon deadline. They were exhausted, muddy, and soaking wet, but they'd completed every objective successfully. As they crossed the finish line, Sergeant Williams stood waiting with his arms crossed and his usual stern expression. Not bad, Squad 3. Not bad at all. You completed all objectives, handled a real medical emergency professionally, and brought everyone back safely. Get cleaned up and report to the briefing room at 1400 hours for your debriefing. The squad dispersed to their barracks, too tired to celebrate but satisfied with their performance. Sarah peeled off her wet uniform and stood under the hot shower for a long time, letting the water wash away the grime and exhaustion. Her body ached in places she didn't know could ache, but she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Kelly was waiting when Sarah emerged from the shower. "Oh my God, I heard about what happened." Patricia breaking her leg, you splinting it, crossing that river. "Your squad is all anyone's talking about." Sarah managed a tired smile. "How did your squad do?" "We did okay, completed most objectives." "Nothing as dramatic as yours, though." Kelly's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Seriously, you're like a hero now. People are saying you were incredible out there." Later that afternoon, all the recruits gathered in the briefing room. Sergeant Williams stood at the front alongside several other drill instructors and training officers. Behind them was a large screen showing squad rankings based on their field exercise performance. "Listen up," Sergeant Williams barked. "The field exercise is complete. Some squads exceeded expectations. Others met the minimum standards. A few fell short. The rankings you see on the screen reflect your overall performance, including completion time, objectives achieved, teamwork, and ability to handle unexpected situations." Sarah's eyes scanned the screen. Squad 3 was ranked second out of 12 squads. A wave of pride washed over her. "They'd done it," Sergeant Williams continued. "I want to specifically call attention to several recruits who demonstrated exceptional leadership and skill during this exercise." He pulled up a list on the screen. "Chen, you showed good tactical thinking during the observer evasion. Thompson from Squad 7, your navigation kept your team on track through difficult terrain. And Mitchell." Sarah's heart skipped a beat as all eyes turned toward her. Mitchell demonstrated outstanding first aid skills during a real emergency, took point during dangerous river crossing, and consistently performed above expectations throughout the exercise. Your actions likely prevented further injury to recruit Patricia Chen. And your tactical suggestions contributed significantly to your squad's success. The room was silent. Sarah felt her face flush, but this time not from shame or embarrassment. This was recognition for her abilities, what she could do rather than how she looked. After the briefing ended, recruits filed out of the room talking excitedly about the exercise. Several people Sarah barely knew came up to congratulate her or thanked her for setting a good example. It was overwhelming and strange, but in a good way. Marcus walked past her without a word, his jaw tight. Some things, apparently, didn't change easily. The weeks following the field exercise brought new challenges and new lessons. The training intensified as they moved into more advanced skills, weapons qualifications, tactical formations, combat scenarios, and leadership exercises. Sarah continued to excel, earning top marks in most areas. But something else was happening too. Word of her performance during the field exercise had spread beyond just the recruit company. Instructors watched her more closely, not with suspicion, but with interest. During one particularly challenging combat scenario, a senior training officer pulled her aside afterward. "Mitchell, you have good instincts. You stay calm under pressure, you think tactically, and you lead by example rather than by force. Those are valuable qualities. Keep developing them." Sarah didn't know what to say except, "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." The officer nodded and walked away, leaving Sarah wondering what that conversation had really been about. Kelly had a theory. "I think they're identifying people for leadership roles. You know, after basic training, some recruits get recommended for advanced schools or special assignments. Maybe you're on their radar." Sarah wanted to believe that was possible, but years of being overlooked and dismissed made it hard to imagine. She focused on her training and tried not to hope for too much. Meanwhile, Marcus had grown increasingly isolated. His behavior during the field exercise, particularly his initial reluctance to help during Patricia's injury, hadn't gone unnoticed by the instructors. He received several formal counselings about his attitude and teamwork skills. His group of followers had dwindled as other recruits realized that associating with him brought more trouble than benefit. One evening, about 2 weeks before graduation from basic training, Sarah was cleaning her rifle in the barracks when Marcus appeared in the doorway. He stood there awkwardly, looking like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. "Kelly." Jessica and Maya were also in the room. They all stopped what they were doing and watched Marcus warily. "Mitchell," he finally said. "Can I talk to you?" "Outside?" Sarah considered refusing, but curiosity got the better of her. She set down her rifle and followed him out to the area behind the barracks. The sun was setting. It's painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Marcus shoved his hands in his pockets and stared at the ground. For a long moment, he didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was quiet. I've been a complete jerk to you. Since day one, and I want to say I'm sorry. Sarah crossed her arms, waiting. She'd learned not to trust easy apologies. Marcus continued, his words coming faster now. I don't have a good excuse. I was raised to believe that showing weakness was the worst thing you could do. My dad was military, really tough guy, never showed emotion. When I saw your scars, I don't know what I thought, that maybe you were weak or that you'd be a liability to the unit. He looked up at her finally, and Sarah saw genuine regret in his eyes. But I was wrong. You're one of the toughest people here. What you did in that fire when you were just a kid, what you did with Patricia, crossing that river, all of it. You're not weak. You're the opposite. And I've been taking my own insecurities out on you because it was easier than dealing with my own problems. Sarah didn't respond immediately. Part of her wanted to accept the apology and move on. Part of her was still angry about all the pain he'd caused her over the past weeks. But she also recognized that holding on to anger wouldn't help either of them. I appreciate the apology, she said carefully. But words are easy, Marcus. What matters is how you treat people going forward. Not just me, but everyone. He nodded. I know, and I'm trying to do better. I've been working with the chaplain, talking about my issues. It's not an excuse, but I'm working on it. Okay, Sarah said simply. I hope you succeed. There wasn't anything else to say. Marcus nodded once more and walked away, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts as the last light faded from the sky. 2 days before graduation, the entire recruit company was called to an unexpected assembly. This was unusual, so close to the end of training. Rumors flew through the barracks about what it could mean. When they arrived at the assembly hall, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Standing at the front of the room, alongside Sergeant Williams and the other training staff, was a woman in an officer's uniform decorated with numerous ribbons and medals. Her bearing commanded immediate respect. This was clearly someone very senior, very important. Sergeant Williams called the room to attention. Recruits, you are in the presence of Brigadier General Linda Morrison, Commanding General of this training installation. General, the floor is yours. The general stepped forward. She was a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing and an air of absolute authority. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the room. At ease, recruits. I'm here today because I've been following your training progress with great interest. This company has performed exceptionally well, exceeding standards in multiple areas. But there's one recruit in particular I've been hearing about repeatedly from my training staff. Sarah's stomach fluttered nervously. Around her, other recruits shifted and whispered, wondering who the general meant. This recruit demonstrated extraordinary courage during a childhood tragedy. She has shown exceptional composure under pressure, outstanding first aid skills during a real emergency, and consistent leadership by example throughout training. She has overcome considerable adversity, both past and present, with grace and determination. The general's eyes scanned the room and locked onto Sarah, recruit Sarah Mitchell, front and center. Sarah's legs felt like they might give out beneath her, but military training took over. She marched to the front of the room with her back straight and her head high, coming to attention in front of General Morrison. Her heart pounded so hard she was certain everyone in the room could hear it. The general looked at her for a long moment, and Sarah saw something in her eyes that looked like understanding, maybe even recognition of something shared between them. Recruit Mitchell, I've read the reports from your field exercise. I've reviewed your training scores. I've spoken with your instructors. But more importantly, I've heard about who you are as a person. The general paused. I understand you saved your brother from a house fire when you were 7 years old. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite her nerves. And you sustained significant burns in the process, burns that left permanent scarring. Yes, ma'am. The general nodded slowly. I'm going to tell you something that very few people know about me, Mitchell. When I was 9 years old, I was in a car accident. A drunk driver hit our family vehicle head-on. My mother died at the scene. My father was critically injured, and I was trapped in the back seat with severe injuries to my face and body. The room was absolutely silent. Every recruit was listening intently. I spent 2 years having reconstructive surgeries. I have scars too, Mitchell. Most of them are hidden now, either by surgical skill or by my uniform. But they're there. And growing up with those scars, dealing with the stares and the comments and the whispers that shaped who I became, Sarah felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes but forced them back. She would not cry in front of the entire company, General Morrison continued. I joined the military partly because I wanted to prove that I was more than my scars, more than what happened to me. I wanted to show that courage isn't about not being afraid or not being hurt. It's about standing up anyway. It's about continuing to serve, to lead, to make a difference despite the pain and the challenges. The general stepped closer to Sarah. In the military, we give call signs to aviators, to special operators, to those who've proven themselves in ways that earn special recognition. These call signs represent something about the person, something that defines their character or their achievements. Sarah's confusion must have shown on her face because the general smiled slightly. Mitchell, your instructors have recommended that upon completion of your advanced individual training and assignment to your permanent unit, you'd be given a call sign. This is highly unusual for someone so early in their career, but the recommendation was unanimous. The general pulled a small box from her pocket and opened it. Inside was a patch, beautifully embroidered with a phoenix rising from flames in brilliant oranges, reds, and golds. Your call sign is Phoenix, the mythical bird that rises from fire, reborn and stronger than before. You went through fire as a child, both literally and figuratively. You were burned, you were scarred, but you rose from those flames with courage and strength. And here in training, you faced mockery and adversity. Yet you've risen above it all through your performance, your character, and your unwavering dedication. General Morrison held out the patch to Sarah. This patch is yours, Recruit Mitchell. Wear it with pride when you earn the right to display it on your uniform. Remember that your scars don't define your limitations. They define your strength. Sarah took the patch with trembling hands. Her voice was thick with emotion when she managed to say, "Thank you, ma'am. I'm honored." The general placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "The honor is mine, Phoenix. I expect great things from you." She turned to address the entire company. "Let this be a lesson to all of you. The person next to you in formation, the soldier covering your position in combat, it's the teammate you trust with your life. They may not look like what you expect a hero to look like. They may have scars, visible or invisible. They may have overcome things you cannot imagine. Judge people by their character, by their actions, by their courage, not by their appearance." Her eyes swept across the room and landed briefly on Marcus, who had gone pale. "And if any of you think it's acceptable to mock or belittle your fellow soldiers for any reason, especially for scars earned through acts of bravery, you do not belong in my army. Is that understood?" "Yes, ma'am." The entire company responded in unison, their voices echoing through the hall. Dismissed. As the company filed out, Sarah stood holding the Phoenix patch, still trying to process what had just happened. Kelly rushed up and hugged her fiercely, followed by Jessica and Maya. Other recruits she barely knew came up to shake her hand or congratulate her. Tom approached with a genuine, "That was incredible, Mitchell. Well deserved." Even Danny, their squad leader from the field exercise, came over. "Phoenix, huh? It fits. You've definitely risen above everything that's been thrown at you." Marcus stood at a distance, watching. When the crowd around Sarah finally thinned, he approached slowly. He looked uncomfortable, maybe even ashamed. "That was really something," he said quietly. "I had no idea about the general's history, or that they were watching you that closely." Sarah looked at him steadily. "The general's right, you know? Everyone has their own story, their own battles. You never really know what someone's been through." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. "I know that now. I just wish I'd figured it out sooner. Before I wasted all this time being an idiot." He hesitated, then continued. "For what it's worth, you deserve that recognition. You've earned everyone's respect, even from people like me who were too stupid to see it earlier. People can change, Sarah said. If they want to. I want to, Marcus said. I really do. Sarah studied him for a moment, then nodded. Then do it. Not for me, but for yourself and for everyone you'll serve with in the future. Graduation day arrived 2 days later. The ceremony was held on the parade ground with families in attendance. Sarah's mother had flown in from Ohio, and her brother had driven up with her despite missing school. When Sarah spotted them in the crowd, her brother was grinning so wide his face looked like it might split. The recruits marched in formation, their movements crisp and synchronized after weeks of practice. They'd all come so far from those first awkward days. They'd been broken down and rebuilt into soldiers. They'd learned what they were capable of achieving. As Sergeant Williams called out names and handed out certificates, Sarah waited for her turn. When her name was finally called, she marched forward to receive her graduation certificate. The sergeant shook her hand firmly. Outstanding work, Mitchell. The Army is lucky to have you. Thank you, Sergeant. I learned from the best. After the ceremony, Sarah found her family in the crowd. Her mother hugged her for a long time, crying happy tears. Her brother, tall and lanky now at 17, looked at her with undisguised pride. You were amazing up there, he said. Mom and I were so proud we were about to burst. Thanks for coming, Sarah said, her own eyes getting misty. It means everything to have you both here. Her mother touched Sarah's scarred cheek gently, the way she'd done 1,000 times before. I was so scared when you said you were enlisting. But now I understand. You've always been brave, Sarah, since you were a little girl pulling your brother from that fire. This is where you belong. General Morrison made an appearance at the reception following the ceremony. She moved through the crowd, speaking with various graduates and their families. When she reached Sarah's family, she shook hands with Sarah's mother and brother. Your daughter is exceptional, the general told them. She's going to do great things in the Army. Sarah's mother smiled through her tears. She's always been my hero. Even before she became a soldier. The general nodded. That's because heroes aren't made by uniforms or titles. They're made by the choices they make when it matters most. Your daughter made that choice when she was 7 years old, and she's been making it every day since. As the sun began to set on graduation day, Sarah stood with Kelly, Jessica, and Maya, looking out over the training ground where they'd spent the past 12 weeks transforming themselves. And you believe we actually made it? Kelly asked. There were days I thought I'd never survive. We made it because we had each other, Maya said. Nobody gets through this alone. Jessica nudged Sarah with her elbow. And because we had Phoenix here showing us how it's done, Sarah laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. I couldn't have done it without you all. You supported me when things were hard. You reminded me why I was here when I wanted to give up. That's what friends do, Kelly said. And we're not just friends. We're sisters now. Battle buddies. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant colors. In a few days, they'd ship out to their advanced training schools, heading in different directions to learn their specialized military skills. After that, they'd be assigned to units around the world. This chapter was ending, but a new one was beginning. Sarah touched the Phoenix patch in her pocket. She'd carry it with her, wherever the Army sent her. It represented more than just recognition from a general or a call sign. It represented everything she'd overcome, everyone who'd supported her, and everything she still had yet to achieve. The scars on her face would never fade. But now, when she looked in the mirror, she didn't see marks of tragedy. She saw evidence of courage, of sacrifice, of strength that had been tested by fire and proven unbreakable. She saw Phoenix. Marcus approached the group hesitantly. Hey, I know I'm probably not welcome, but I wanted to say goodbye before we all ship out. The four women looked at each other, then Kelly shrugged. You've been doing better these last couple weeks. I guess people deserve second chances. Third chances in your case? Jessica added with a slight smile. Marcus managed a weak smile back. Yeah, I've got a lot to make up for. But I wanted you all to know, especially you, Mitchell, that I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better. What the general said about judging people by their character instead of their appearance, that hit me hard. I needed to hear it. Sarah extended her hand. Good luck with your training, Marcus. I hope you find what you're looking for. He shook her hand gratefully. Thanks, Phoenix. You're going to be an amazing soldier. I'm sorry I couldn't see that from the beginning. As Marcus walked away, Sarah felt a sense of closure. Not everything in life got resolved neatly with apologies and handshakes. Some wounds took time to heal. Some people never changed. But Marcus seemed genuine in his desire to improve, and that was enough. That night, lying in her bunk for the last time, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a scared 7-year-old girl running into flames to save her brother, through years of bullying and pain, to standing in front of a general receiving recognition for her courage and strength. The path hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Her phone buzzed with a text from her brother. I told all my friends my sister has a call sign now. They think you're basically a superhero. I've always known you were. Love you. Sarah smiled in the darkness and typed back, Love you too. Stay out of trouble. Another text came through, this time from an unknown number. She opened it curiously. This is General Morrison. I wanted to give you my contact information. If you ever need guidance, support, or just someone who understands what it's like to carry scars and serve anyway, don't hesitate to reach out. You remind me of myself at your age, Phoenix. The Army needs more soldiers like you. Stay strong. Sarah saved the number and stared at the message for a long time. A general, someone who'd risen to the highest levels of military leadership, despite her own traumatic past, believed in her, saw potential in her, offered mentorship. The scared recruit who'd arrived at Fort Bragg 12 weeks ago wouldn't have believed this was possible. But Phoenix believed. Phoenix knew that she was capable of amazing things. Phoenix understood that her scars were proof of survival, not symbols of weakness. As sleep finally claimed her, Sarah Mitchell dreamed of flames and rising birds, of challenges yet to come and victories yet to be won. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new tests, new opportunities to prove that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about facing your fears and rising anyway, like a phoenix from the ashes.